What did you witness when you were at the border?
Yeah, exactly that. So Border Patrol is not being authorized in some areas, the ability to do overtime. So if they have an 8-hour shift, imagine they're on an operation. It takes sometimes a couple hours to get to where a group is because the terrain's so bad. They get out there, not to mention, so you have terrain and weather issues. Then they get to the group, and the group all runs in different directions, so now they have to chase them as best they can, and they only end up rounding up a fraction of them. And then, by the way, once you get towards the end of your 8-hour shift, it's time to go home, and you got to talk either new people onto that group or let it go. And typically there's so many groups out there that they just let them go. And I mean, the other thing too, I'll tell you real quick, that what some of the Border Patrol members told me that flew with me, the things that bothered them the most is that some Americans are talking about the Border Patrol almost as if they're the Gestapo. And they're like, you know, we are here to protect America. We're working hard, rugged conditions, and some people refer to us as basically the enemy, and it's disheartening, I think.
You know, on the heels of that are the reports of the sicknesses, and we heard from the commissioner at the Border Patrol that they're overburdened in terms of medical care. What are some of the things that these people are dealing with as they try to escape the areas where they've come from?
Well, I mean, they come with all kinds of, you know, if they have an illness, and now if you're in close proximity with other migrants, you're spreading that illness and all those kinds of conditions, not to mention the hard terrain that you're usually a coyote, which is a guide from the cartel who's making a lot of money, is leading them through, which doesn't help to their conditions by any means. You have dehydration, starvation, things like that. But, you know, here's the other thing, Harris. People talk about the active duty on the border as if this is some manufactured crisis. The active duty, one of the things they do is help medically some of the people that are in this environment so that Border Patrol can be alleviated to do their job. And
there's a lot of pressure always. We know that we've lost 3 children in the custody of U.S. People who are trying to help. But it's difficult. You know what? I want to ask you something, because I've been watching this hearing today, and you mentioned the cost of taking care. Secretary Nielsen said it's about $6,000 equivalent in American dollars for people to pay to come to this country. So those mules are making a lot of money. During the hearing, Representative Max Rose from New York, a Democrat, was talking with the Secretary about a need for a border wall. Let's watch that, and then I want to get your response.
I do not understand the math or the science or the planning behind this. That's my issue. I do not understand how this leads to any positive effect on the opioid epidemic, to any positive effect in terms of our efforts at counterterrorism. What models are this based off of?
We're happy to come share with you in detail, sir, but in general, the impedance and denial prevents that smuggling through that part of the border.
Congressman Kinzinger, it is well known that most of the illegal drugs come through ports of entry. But the recent argument, and you've been able to see it, is it firm, legitimate to say, well, you take your eye off of some of those ports of entry because you have all these illegals coming in and other parts of the porous border?
And not to mention, it's hard to tell exactly how many drugs come over the border, because if somebody's coming in illegally and we don't even detect them, we don't know. I can tell you firsthand that there are drugs coming through that. And to say the thing about the wall, you know, for him to say this, the math and the science to me, of course, look at this logically. A barrier impedes travel. When somebody touches a barrier to climb it, first off, about half the population's unable to climb a 30-foot barrier. But if you do, a sensor goes off to immediately detect Border Patrol that you're there, and then you can have the assets behind the scenes. But the other issue, Democrats say they're all for technology but not for a wall. But they're all pulling the National Guard from the border. The National Guard is the technology on the border. I was there 3 other times under President Obama. That is the technology. And all these Democratic governors are playing politics and pulling the Guard back.
Well, they put some of this in place, those Democrats. I mean, they were there. Those pictures of children in cages in 2014 weren't during this current presidency.
That's right.
I want to ask you about meeting with President Trump and the headline, if you will, that you hope to carry with you into the White House.
Well, the big thing I want to share with the president is my firsthand experience. The fact that he's right on this national emergency, the fact that he is saying what needs to be said, and I think it's taking that to him and saying, here was my experience. This isn't the experience from, you know, somebody who's in charge of Border Patrol. That's important. It's not the experience from a lawmaker that has no experience in this. It was somebody that went and saw the operations as part of it, which is really important. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with him, and I hope he goes and visits Tucson, that Tucson sector, because they do great work.
Yeah, Nogales, right?
That's it.
Yes. Adam Kinzinger, Congressman, thank you very much for your time.
Take care.